Yo, guys, what's going on? Lucky Rave is back again to give you guys another fairy tale live stream discussion slash. I said fairy tale, but you know, 100 Years Quest to be more specific, because that's what this is. Fairy Tale 100 Years Quest live stream discussion slash review, specifically for the anime, which will be episode 7. And this episode officially concludes the Water Dragon God Arc saga, which is saying a lot. Actually, it's really saying a lot. Like when you take it into perspective, and as to why this episode, like this stream, took a little bit longer, similar to last episode. A, your boy's back into dealing with work, so due to that, like a lot of my free time has kind of been somewhat limited. Okay, and it's like I've been saying, I love making content for you guys, and I love doing these kind of things. But sometimes, not sometimes, but when you're dealing with work, it does take up time. And when you're done with work, you're kind of left with like a lot of like not a lot of options, but there's like so much stuff that you want to do, and sometimes you can't fulfill those things like the day of or like within 24 hours. And given that, I knew, okay, if I wasn't going to be able to talk about this episode, say Monday night, then at the very least, I'll push it to Saturday. And I will say this, for the time being, it will remain like this just for now. So if for whatever reason I'm not able to cover the episode like on Monday nights, then do expect the latest for these stream discussions to happen on Saturday. And it's actually kind of a good thing that I'm talking about it right now because the new episode is about to drop. Episode 8 is going to be dropping tomorrow, and I'm so curious about what we get with episode 8. And before we dive into that, like I said, this won't be a permanent thing for the channel. It's just going to be a temporary thing, at least until when the next break hits for me. Like say when I'm able to find a lot more free time. Obviously, I'll be back in the full swing with what I'm going to be tackling. But just for now, for just a small amount of time, it's going to look like this, just for a bit. Having said that, though, episode 7. All's Well That Ends Well. It's a very fitting chapter title. It's a super, and I mean super fitting, in a lot more ways than one. Because you gotta look at it like this. With this episode, like I said in the very beginning, it's the conclusion of the Water Dragon God arc. And like I've been doing these streams so far, I'm gonna also come talk about the manga in conjunction with the anime because you know I like going through both sides, seeing what's there, what was cut, what was not cut, and when I looked at this episode in particular, I didn't really see a lot. Like I really didn't, because I was thinking about this and going like, well, is there any big changes to it? And for the most part, no. I didn't notice anything like huge that was cut with episode 7. And for those of you curious as to what we covered with episode 7, basically, we're still on volume 3. Let me just say that right now. We're still on volume 3. And this episode covered episodes 23, episodes 24. I said episodes. My bad. Chapter 23, chapter 24, and a portion of chapter 25. That is what we covered in this uh, that is the content that was covered within episode 7. But let me go through them, okay? So 23 was titled The Blessed Harbor Town. And what we see from the content is, everyone's rebuilding town. Natsu's looking over the city of Ermina, and he's thinking back to like what happened, and he asks Happy like, "Hey, so Happy, I don't really what I don't really remember what happened after he ate those flames." And Happy's just like, "You were something else for sure." But the one thing Happy tells well, actually, no, you have something funny that happens because he's like, "Did I say anything weird?" And Happy just says, like, "Yeah, a couple times, but it always sounded like, huh?" And Lucy just bobs him on the head, which I think is like, again, so Lucy like, obviously, but at the same time, it's so comedic because she just says, "Huh? My foot? You need to have better control of yourself, or you might lose it every time you eat flames." And she even goes on to say, like, "Hey, I got burned thanks to you. Burned on a sweet maiden, on a sweet maiden. Can you imagine?" And here's the thing: I do not understand the complaints. I really don't. Like, what is up with the fairy tale fan base? Okay, because y'all guys, for whatever reason, threw a huge fit over just Natsu checking over like the burn marks. And I mean, look, sure, the way it was played out, like with the especially like with the sound effect, yeah, it kind of gave off that comedic vibe. It was like oh, like ew, like no, like what? I can't believe I'm seeing this. But all Natsu here's in context of the scene, all Natsu's doing is checking, like, for any burn marks. Now, granted, was it with consent with Lucy? Obviously, no. But I mean, and you want to know how long the scene lasted? It was like a 5 second scene. Y'all threw a huge fit over a 5 second scene? Come on now. Now, not everybody did this, but like, I just remember like right before the episode came out, like people were like throwing a fit about it, and I'm just like, what? Like, really? This is what we're complaining about. Not significant story stuff, but just gags. Okay. Anyway, moving forward. And Lucy just says, "Well, Wendy was able to heal me, thankfully." And he's like, "That's great." And then Happy brings this up. This is where the this is where the serious stuff hits. And the serious stuff, like I always say, supersedes the gags in more ways than one. And this, I think, is a huge deal. Because Happy just tells Natsu, "You should know Lucy was the one who stopped you." Pretty much like, the very end of the last episode when, she was comforting Natsu and trying to get him back to his senses. And Lucy thinks back on that too, and she's just like, "I just, you know." And this is what Natsu says that kind of got me like, whoa, that's a first, like a huge first for Natsu. He says this. He bows his head down. Tell Lucy. He's like, "I'm sorry." And she says, "Ah, but it's like it's all good." But Natsu just says, "No, I won't let this go." And like when you think about that, with Natsu saying that in particular, I mean, that's beautiful. Okay? That's such a beautiful thing about like Natsu's growth as a character in particular too, okay? Like if we're comparing how Natsu was in the original fairy tale, which he did go through some level of development, yes, but you can clearly see so far. Again, we're like if we're looking at this from the manga standpoint, we're like like almost like let's say 2.5 volumes into this point. 2.5 volumes into Hunter's Quest, and we're seeing some growth for Natsu's character. So it's subtle. You can kind of think of it as like okay, it's like depth wise, like he technically he is still the same Natsu we all know and love, but when you see little inklings like this, it's like, whoa, damn. And especially because it strengthens more for Nalu. And I can say that with certainty. This by itself strengthens more for Nalu than anything. But speaking of this, okay, I mean, you do have a bit of a funny transition here where he's like, that's it. We're not just like, hey, maybe we can, like, just like pour on you to make sure the burns could, like, could be, disinfected. And Lucy's like, yeah, no, like, just stop it. And the next part of the scene that you see, and dude, this was beautiful. Okay, this next part really gravitated so much because the wind's blowing. Lucy goes like the sea breeze. It's lovely. Natsu says, yeah, and they're both looking over the city. And look, how this was depicted in the manga is really good, but the anime took it to a whole another freaking level. Like, I was staring at this scene in particular for like a while. I was just like, damn. Like, just this shot alone of like Natsu and Lucy looking over the city. It's got such a romantic undertone vibe to it. And I'm just like, dude, these two gotta get together. Okay? Like, we can let the original fairy tale manga slide, but this in particular hero, listen, there ain't no getting out of this one, okay? There is no getting out of us having 100 years quest ending, and we're like in the same situation we were with the end of the original manga, where Natsu Lucy's like just kind of, we don't do much with it. No, you're doing so much again with 100 Years Quest, just between, and that's not even talking about what's currently going on in the manga. Okay, this far in, 7 episodes, aka 23 chapters into the manga. Like, come on, we are doing so much for Nalu. Okay, within just these 7 episodes alone, scream so much, so much. And Lucy's like, "Yeah, this town is gonna be all right. I can feel it." And then we cut over to Gray, and Gray's just like, "I'm telling you, you guys were humans all along." And they're all confused. Urza's just like, "Can't blame you for being a little confused." And Wendy's like, "It was the water dragon's magic that turned you into fish." But why would he do such a thing? Is what one of the villains is saying. He's supposed to be the town's guardian. And Carlo's just like, he was losing control of his power, driving up the town's water level. He turned you into fish so you could survive the flood. And then they're all just like, see, I knew he cared about us. The honored water dragon god really was our divine protector. Oh, dragon, we are so grateful. No way. Oh, Kashima. He was solving a problem he caused, but oh well. And the other citizens like, he was our divine protector and you killed him. I guess there wasn't any choice. He was being so violent. That was the holy water dragon's wrath. But immediately, Caramel comes over and she's, "You're wrong. Suijin was a kind-hearted and compassionate dragon. That wasn't rage she was showing. And they're like, you're from the temple, Caramel-san. It was grief. He did truly love the people of this town. For him to have some irresistible power driving him to do the opposite of all he wanted, it broke his heart." And as she's saying all this, that's when Suijin like just pops up, and he's just like, I'm sorry about that." Everyone's like cheering, and Caramel's just like, "You need rest." And he's like, "No, I'm fine." To survive the beating we gave him, is he a dragon or is he just a monster? And Wendy's just like, whatever. I'm just glad he made it. And Suijin's like, well, I'm as good as dead. There's no more magic left in me. I'm just a human now. Oh no! Holy water dragon! How can this be? And he's like, the truth is, I think this might be for the best. I'm going to live the rest of my life not as the holy water dragon, but simply as Mercphobia. I'm going to spend the time I have left with this town and everyone in it. Everyone's like excited, they're cheering. Gray's happy, Urza's happy, Wendy's happy too. Same thing goes for Natsu and Lucy as they're like looking over. And Happy's just like, can you imagine if he died? And not just like, shut it. Like, no. Well, we're not even going to touch on that subject. Lucy says, I guess at least that's settled then. We cut over to Mugia Dragon, and you see like the light flashing away with the water dragon god. And Elfsir is just like one of the 5 dragon gods has fallen. No one has managed that in 100 years. Those people I sent, they might actually be able to complete it. The 100 years quest. Now, the manga I don't think makes this super obvious, but I feel like with the anime, big speculation here. A lot of people have been theorizing. This is, and again, this isn't a spoiler. It's just people theorizing. Like even right now in the original, in 100 Years Quest, people are just speculating this. That Elfsyria might be like some secret final boss, like some not final boss, but like the final villain of 100 Years Quest. That's what a lot of people are speculating. That he might be like some secret dragon god that we don't know about. Potentially being like the sun god. Maybe. I mean, who really knows? It's a possibility. We'll have to wait and see. And he says fairy tale. I've never heard of that guild. Actually, no, that's not him. Um, yeah. So from there we cut over to Diablos, and then you see this one guy say fairy tale. Never heard of that. Then you see Scullion, you see Madmo, you see Kyria, and they're all just going. They're all just talking about how they felt about what happened. And the guildmaster just crushes something with I think it's like a bread. So yeah, he crushes bread and he starts eating it. It looks like bread or some kind of like you know filling, if you will. And he, actually no, I'm sorry, it's not bread, it's meat. I should have taken that into account. Yeah, it's meat. It's 100% meat. So yeah, he takes meat and he says the only way to enjoy meat is to drink it. I'll tell you though, there is no forgetting the flavor of dragon. So hurry and get me some more holy dragon meat. And basically, the the guild master for Diablos. I mean, this guy's a dick. Let me just say that right now. This guy's a dick. His name is Jiraj Raisin. Okay, that's his name. Then we cut over to Fairy Tale, the guild hall, right? And Sting and Rogue are here. Now, when I first saw the episode of episode 7, initially I was like, wait, was this actually in the manga or was this something that the anime is just kind of adding on to? But looking at the content again, no, this is like actually straight up canon. Because Sting's here and he's like, huh. And here we finally stopped in for a visit. The heck's going on? And Rogue's like, no one's here. Think they're all on a trip or something. That's Lecter talking to them. And Frosh is like, bro, think so too. Yukino's like, you'd think they'd leave someone behind though. At least Mirajane. And Serrano's like, I smell something. Which is basically Frosh having a bit of the farts going on. And he's like, sorry. And Sting thinking about Natsu. Cut over to the ship that's like just sailing through the seas, and it's Toka, or in this case, it's the White Mage, and she's like, "Now you must die. The rest of the fairies white as well. Wait for me, Natsu-sama. You and your friends." And that basically this part of the episode here was like the end of chapter 23. Like that's the end of chapter 23, which is where we now get to the actual title of the episode, which is All's Well That Ends Well. That is the chapter title here for Fairy Tail Hunters Quest 24. That is what the title is. And basically what we cover here as an explanation. And Mercphobia is just like, Ignia, he came here. I thought it was your magic that burned up the town, but and he's like, but why did you assume everything's my fault? That's what Naz is complaining about. And Lucy's just like, because half of it is. And he's like, I can't believe Ignia was here and everyone's unscathed. So the fire dragon god, what is he? And he goes on to say, like, well, it's like the name suggests. He's one of the five dragon gods of fire. Many years ago, there was a dragon named Igneel called the Fire Dragon King. His blood flows through Ignia's veins. And they're like, huh? Like, Grace is like, excuse me? Wendy's like, so he's Igneel's son? And Lucy's just like, I see, so that's how he knows Natsu. And that's when Suijin kind of puts two and two together, like, wait, so it was Natsu that was raised as Igneel's son. That explains Ignia. He was here to get a look at you. If Igneel's kid is causing trouble on this continent, I'll have to whip him into line. That is what Natsu's saying. And Lucy's just observing Natsu like, okay. If he wants to do this, that's fine, but I mean, that goes without saying. And even Sweden just says like, yeah, there's no way you can beat him. Not just Ignia. All the other dragon gods may prove an unsurmountable challenge. Yeah, but we said we would do it, so we'll do it. That's how our guild works. That's not talking here. And Gray goes on to say, like, is there anything you can tell us about the other dragon gods? They're the reason we came here. But Sweden just says, like, yeah, we haven't really had much contact with one another for like a while. But he does owe them a lot, so he'll tell them what he knows. So they've already talked about Ignia, obviously. That he's devastated countless lands. It's something of a miracle that Hermina is even still here. But then we talk about the next part, okay? And I'll be real. I was expecting this episode to be episode 12 of season 1. Because for those of you that don't know, 100 Years Quest season 1 will be 25 episodes. And I would have thought this would have been like the, the midway point of season 1. But it's episode 7, which kind of has me a little curious. Because he says the next is the wood dragon god, Alderaan. The wood dragons are the largest in the world. Alderaan is said to use the power of nature to know what's in people's hearts. Then there's the moon dragon god, a massive dragon who uses the power of the stars. And the metal dragon god, Viernus. Viernus is the one dragon god I know nothing about. We've never even met. And Wendy's just like, even though you're both dragon gods, and Mercphobia, or in this case, Suijin, just says like, well, we don't really call ourselves the dragon gods. That's just a name that the humans gave us. And this part I have found kind of funny because Natsu's just like, why do you call yourself gods if you were so bad? Yeah, they could have called you the Five Dragon Church. And Lucy's like, yeah, I agree. It might seem a bit unusual. Or not, yeah, but then Caramel's like, but when confronted with entitles or entities of immense power, humans may consider them divinities out of sheer terror, whether they're good or not. The five of us have never been in the same place together, so we don't really know that much about each other. But Urzus goes on to say, but still, that was helpful. Thank you. And, Suijin says, I said I don't know where the other four are, but I have a good guess about one. Really? As I told you, I don't believe you can best them, but if you're still interested. And, we see them walking out of town, similarly to how episode 1 ended. The episode doesn't exactly end here, but basically, you have Suijin and Caramel just like watching over the town. And Caramel is just like, so they're leaving. Holy water dragon god, I must apologize to you. If I didn't ask them to if I hadn't asked something so foolish of the white mage, and he interrupts her by saying, "Hey, all's well that ends well, right? The water dragon god is dead, and the disaster that threatened this town is averted. We'll rebuild, and I'll live with the people here as a fellow human. I couldn't be happier. Holy water dragon god," and he just says, "Just call me Mercphobia. That's all you have to call me." Which, again, I know we've only had them for a short time frame, but listen, that is that is like a couple thing here with Suijin and Karamil. Okay, that is a couples thing going on, and you cannot deny that. Never. That's way too long, huh? What about Mur then? Mur-sama. That has a nice ring too. But yeah, moving along. They're walking through onwards towards the interior of Geltina. Like Lucy's like so fired up. Same thing goes for Natsu too. I'm burning to get started. And Grace like, surely we're not gonna walk all the way there, right? No choice. There are no trains on this continent. And if you didn't know how funny things were getting, this is where things get like super, super funny. Because Lucy was like, huh? But I was sure there were. No, the map I got yesterday didn't have any. Huh? And you see what happens, okay? You see the map, and you notice that some of it's been a bit rubbed off. And Urza looks directly towards like Wendy and Natsu, and they're just like, "Hey, did you erase the rail?" It's like you erased the railroads, didn't you? And Natsu's just like, "We didn't do any. We don't want to ride any trains." And Wendy's like, "I didn't do anything. Hold it right there." And Wendy obviously is just like, "I didn't do anything. It wasn't my fault." And Carla's like, "Well, how do you do it anyway?" He just rubbed and rubbed until the paper started to. I mean, it's a smart idea. I mean, because you can't exactly burn it. That's the thing. There's no way you can burn something like that. And then Grand and Lucy are just talking this over. I think there is a train to the interior from a place just near from here. Well, let's start there, and then Tekka Town, huh? And this is where we get to Tekka, which is where if they go from there, they can head to the center of Geltina, Drazel, which is the biggest city on the continent. Will it be as lovely as Crocus on Ishgar? In Drazel, we should find information. And this is like Lucy just narrating everything when they're like in the tent. And I am so thankful they didn't cut this bit out because going through the manga again, especially this stuff, I thought, man, I know they've cut a couple like minor Nalu stuff like early on. I think it was like what episode 2 or 3, but this was like one of the things where I was just like, please, whatever you do, don't cut this stuff because this is kind of cute. This is cute stuff about the wood dragon god Alderon, and it's basically just Lucy, just chilling, just writing stuff down in her notes in her diary. Alderon is supposed to be the world's biggest dragon, but I wonder if being a wood dragon god makes it vulnerable to fire. Maybe Natsu's flames will give us a leg up, right? And like you see how she's like super blushy about it. Then she's just thinking about how what Natsu became, after he took on Ignia's flames, and she's just thinking like, oh, Natsu. And as soon as she says that, this man just pops up. Okay, he pops and he's like, "You called?" And she's like, "This is my room." And you would think with that kind of reaction, Urza and Wendy would both get up, but they are like just knocked out. Okay, they are straight up like passed out, and not really, but it is the girl's tent. You can't just waltz in here. And he's like, "Huh? Urza's asleep already? Yeah, and I'm about to be too. So scram." And Natsu kind of gets this cheeky idea, like, she really cheated me out this afternoon. It's time for me to come have some payback. And Lucy's just like, I'm so tired. And where we end up this chapter is some doodles. Yeah, get some doodles from Natsu that he just drew on Urza's face. He's like, "Morning, everyone," and they're just all cracked up. Like Gray's cracking up, Happy's cracking up. Poor Wendy kind of got in on it too, and even Lucy to an extent. And Lucy even says, like, "Man, I should have stayed awake." But we don't end off the episode actually there, because like I said, we cover a small portion of chapter 25. Okay? So they walk into town, which is a Tekka, right? And Natsu's like, "Man, I really hate the train." Like they're basically just all kind of about to get ready for what's to come with the train ride and everything. But then they get like hounded. At least Urza does. Like, "Oh hey, you're like Elka's son, right?" And they're like, "Oh, like, come again? Who is this?" Like, imagine a group of fans, okay? That's who they're viewing Urza as. And they're like, "Elkis? Well, what was that about? Maybe Urza's got a doppelganger in this town." And as soon as that happens, you see an Urza lookalike, okay? And no, this is not Nightwalker. Clearly, this is not Nightwalker. And it's like, "Oh, Urza, so that's her name." And this is both Natsu and Lucy catching this. Like they're just like, hmm, what is this? Another Urza? What's going on? Like even Wendy and Gray are confused too. And she's just like, "Yo, just come with me." And the actual episode ends here. And like I said, this is not the end of the chapter itself. It's like within like say the first few pages of chapter 25. And they see the Fairy Nail Guild. Okay, so she sees the guild. She takes them to the guild, and it's called Fairy Nail. And they're like, uh, hmm, what is this? And like that's where we're left, where we leave off the episode. We're left on this part where we're like thinking, what is going on here? What are we doing? You know? And given that, this episode, action wise, there's not a lot, okay? If anything, this episode, I would say, is almost like very reminiscent of episode one. So if you look at it from that aspect, you look at how episode one was, and you look at how this episode is. 1 and 7 are almost similar in a lot of ways. Because one's like more of a setup, and 7 is more of like a closure of an arc. And that's what this is. This is like the final closure of the Water Dragon God arc. And I will say, based on that aspect, yeah, sure, fighting wise, there's not a lot. There's not actually, there's not even any. There's not any action at all when it comes to this episode. But for how chill this episode was, for the the sprinkling of Nalu that we get in this episode between Natsu and Lucy, and just again getting more of an idea of where we are going with the story, because Suijin Mercphobia, he's been dealt with, and he gives them an idea. I don't know much, but your next you know ideal target will probably be the Wood Dragon God arc. Like, not the Wood Dragon God arc, but the Wood Dragon God. That'll probably be like your next big threat that you're gonna have to deal with. And ending off the episode with them running into an Urza lookalike, and she leads them to Fairy Nail. It kind of makes you wonder. So, who are these guys? And being a manga reader, obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything. But just know you guys are going to be in for a huge treat, okay? You're going to be in for a huge treat when it comes to the next episode. You really will. And if I'm judging this correctly, with the volume, I want to say the next episode will end off volume 3. I want to say that, but We'll have to see. Time will be the teller of that. But overall, this episode of 100 Years Quest, which is episode 7, I'm going to give it amazing plus. Arguably pure perfection. And like I've been saying this for weeks now. JC staff, so far, been cooking. They've been doing a really, really great job. And this next arc we're about to get into, the Wood Dragon God arc, ooh, man, like, it's about to be interesting. But before we get to that, we have to get to Fairy Nail. And Fairy Nail, just look forward to what's to come for episode 8, okay? Just wait for episode 8, which is gonna be upon us soon. But I know 100% y'all are gonna love it. And with that being said, you guys, that is pretty much all I have to say when it comes to this live stream discussion / review on Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest episode 7. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are on this episode. What was your favorite part about it? How did you guys feel about the Nalu moments? How did you guys feel about the wrap up with Suijin and Caramel? How do you guys feel about the setup for the next, dragon god that we're going to be fighting off against, which is Alderaan? And what are your expectations for Fairy Nail? And with that being said, you guys, that's pretty much it. I'm Lucky Rave. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Fairy Tail content, Hero Mashima content, and I will catch you guys on the flip side. Laters.